1956. Grace Kelly was Hollywood's biggest star, Oscar winner, Hitchcock's muse, the most beautiful woman in the world. Then one day she said, "I'm quitting." Everyone was shocked. Why? Grace said, "I'm becoming a princess." But the real reason was different. Hollywood was destroying her. Gossip, pressure, scandals. Grace was running away. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, because this is the story of how a star became a princess and escaped, but how she became lonely in the palace and was never happy. Grace Patricia Kelly was born on November 12, 1929 in Philadelphia. From a wealthy family, her father John Kelly was an Olympic gold medal rower, then became a millionaire contractor. Her mother, Margaret, was a society woman, but Grace's childhood was cold. Her father didn't love her. "You're not strong enough," he'd say. Grace would say, "I'll show you." At 18, she went to New York to become an actress. Her father said, "You won't succeed. Acting isn't a serious profession." Grace didn't listen. In 1950, she started acting school in New York, got small roles on Broadway. She was beautiful but different. Blonde, elegant, with cold eyes. Directors said Grace is too distant. The audience won't warm to her. But Grace said, "This is who I am. I won't change." In 1951, Hollywood made her an offer. Grace accepted. Her first films were small roles. But in 1952, everything changed with High Noon. She acted opposite Gary Cooper. It was a Western. Grace played Cooper's wife. Just a few scenes, but it was enough. Everyone talked about Grace. Who is this cold blonde? In 1954, Alfred Hitchcock offered her Rear Window. She'd act with James Stewart. Hitchcock said, "You're perfect, Grace. Cold but passionate, elegant but dangerous." Grace said, "Thank you, Mr. Hitchcock." The film was successful. Grace became a superstar overnight. Hitchcock called her my muse. They made 3 more films. Dial M for Murder, To Catch a Thief, The Swan, each one a masterpiece. In 1955, Grace won an Oscar for The Country Girl. She was 25, the world's most famous woman. But this fame came with a price. Studios wanted to control Grace. She signed a contract with MGM. The contract said, "You cannot marry without studio permission. The studio decides which films you'll be in. If you cause a scandal, the contract is canceled." Grace said, "This isn't fair." The studio head said, "Fair? You're a star, Grace. We made you a star. You'll follow our rules." Grace complied. She had no other choice. But Grace's private life didn't turn out as the studio wanted. In 1953, she acted with Clark Gable in Mogambo. They filmed in Africa. It took weeks. There was chemistry between Grace and Gable. They spent time together every day. They'd go on safari after dinner. The crew said, "There's something between them." Clark Gable was married, his 3rd marriage. But he didn't care. Neither did Grace. Their relationship ended when the film finished, but Hollywood found out. The newspapers wrote, "Grace Kelly loves married men." Gossip started. Grace said, "That's not true. We were just good friends." Nobody believed it. The studio called her in. "Grace, this is a scandal. It's ruining your image. Date someone single. Get married. Start a family," Grace said. "But I don't love anyone," the studio said. "Doesn't matter. Play a role." "You're an actress," Grace said. "Do I have to play a role in real life too?" The studio said, "Yes, that's part of this job." In 1954, she grew close to Bing Crosby. Crosby was a famous singer. He was 51. Grace was 24. Crosby had just become a widower. Their relationship was serious. Grace would say, "Maybe we'll get married." Crosby took her to meet his family, but his family objected. Grace is too young, too famous, not suitable. Crosby listened to his family. He left Grace. Grace was devastated. "But he loved me. How could he leave?" The studio said, "Because you're not good, Grace. You're the scandal queen." In 1955, she filmed Dial M for Murder with Ray Milland. Milland was married, had 2 children, 20 years of marriage, but he fell in love with Grace. Their relationship wasn't secret. They'd kiss on set, hold hands. The newspapers took photos. Milland's wife filed for divorce. Hollywood turned into a scandal. Grace Kelly is destroying families. The studio called Grace. This is career suicide. Grace, leave Milland. Now, Grace said, no, I love him. The studio said, then we're firing you. Grace got scared. Okay, I'll leave him. Grace left Milland. But she was devastated inside. She told friends, I just want to love. Why is it so hard? But the answer was simple. Hollywood wanted to control women, especially beautiful, famous women. Grace was tired of this pressure. Maybe Hollywood isn't for me, she thought. But the real problem was something else. Grace's image was ice princess, cold, elegant, untouchable. But the real Grace was different. She was warm, passionate, believed in love. Hollywood said, you'll play a role in front of the camera and behind it. Grace said, have I become a product, not an actress? The studio said, yes, and you're an expensive product. We'll protect you. Grace said, you're not protecting me, you're imprisoning me. May 1955. Grace went to the Cannes Film Festival. There was a premiere for To Catch a Thief. During the festival, a meeting with Monaco's Prince Rainier III was arranged. Just for photos. Protocol. Grace said, I don't want to go. I'm tired. Her agent said, you have to go. The prince is waiting for you. Grace said, okay, but 15 minutes. She went to Monaco Palace. Prince Rainier greeted her. He was 32, not handsome, but charismatic. They toured the palace, walked through the gardens, talked. Rainier asked, how's Hollywood? Grace said, exhausting. Rainier said, why? Grace said, because everything's controlled. I'm not free. Rainier said, I understand. I'm not free either. Being a prince isn't easy. Grace looked at him. For the first time, someone understood her. 15 minutes turned into 2 hours. As Grace was leaving the palace, Rainier asked, can I see you again? Grace said, I don't know. I live in America. Rainier said, I can write to you. Grace said, okay. The next day, Rainier wrote a letter. Grace wrote back. For months, letters went back and forth. Rainier came to America to see Grace. At Christmas 1955, he proposed. Grace, will you marry me? Grace said, but I'm an actress. I have a career. Rainier said, you'll be my princess. Your career will end, but you'll be free. Grace thought. Hollywood was suffocating her. Gossip, scandals, pressure. Every day, a new rule. What will you wear? Who will you date? Which film will you be in? Grace was tired. Maybe this is an escape. From Hollywood, from pressure, from gossip. She said yes to Rainier. I'll marry you. January 1956. Grace announced, I'm engaged to Monaco's Prince Rainier. I'm leaving my career. Hollywood was shocked. The studio head said, you're crazy, Grace. You're the biggest star. Why are you quitting? Grace said, because I'm not happy. Hitchcock said, but we were going to make more films with you. Grace said, I'm sorry, Alfred. But this is my decision. Hitchcock was devastated. You were my muse. What will I do now? Grace said, you'll find someone else. Hitchcock said, no, you're irreplaceable. April 19th, 1956, Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier's wedding. They called it the wedding of the century. 600 guests, live on television, 30 million viewers. Grace in a white wedding dress, elegant, beautiful, looked happy. But inside she was afraid. Did I make the right decision? She thought. After the wedding, Grace moved to Monaco, became Princess Grace. The first few months, everything was beautiful. Monaco was small but beautiful. The palace was magnificent. Rainier was kind. Grace thought, maybe I can be happy. But then she learned the rules. Being a princess wasn't freedom. There were rules. Many rules. Where you'll sit, how you'll speak, what you'll wear, who you'll talk to, which events you'll attend. Everything was protocol. Grace said, but I want to be an actress. Rainier said, not anymore, you're a princess. Grace said, can I make just one more film? Rainier said, no, princesses don't make films. Hitchcock still had hope. In 1962, he offered Grace the film Marnie, sent her the script, please, Grace, one last film, with you. Grace, read it. It was a beautiful script. I want to accept, she told Rainier. Rainier said no. Grace said, why? Rainier said, because you're not an actress anymore. You're Monaco's princess, my wife, our children's mother. Hollywood is in the past. Grace cried. But I miss it. The camera, the set, acting, Rainier said. I'm sorry, but the answer is no, Grace wrote to Hitchcock. I'm sorry, Alfred. I can't accept. Rainier won't allow it. Hitchcock was devastated. He made the film with Kim Novak, but it was never the same. If it had been Grace, it would have been a masterpiece, he said. Grace had 3 children, Carolyn in 1957, Albert in 58, Stephanie in 65. She focused on the children. But she was unhappy. She told friends, I lost my dreams. I'm not just a mother and wife. I'm an actress. But nobody wants to see that. Rainier said, you're a princess. You don't need to be anything else, Grace said, but I'm more than that. Rainier said, no, being a princess is enough. The marriage wasn't happy either. Rainier was cold, focused on work, didn't spend time with Grace. Grace would ask, do you want to talk to me? Rainier would say, I'm tired. Tomorrow never came. This went on for years. Grace was lonely. In the palace, but alone. Married, but single. In the 1970s, gossip started. It was said Grace had inappropriate relationships. It was said Rainier had other women too. Both were lies. But the marriage had collapsed. They only looked happy in front of cameras. When the camera turned off, they were strangers. Summer of 1982. Grace was 52. Her children had grown up. Caroline was married. Albert was in the military. Stephanie was 17, rebellious. Grace was tired. But there was hope. She was meeting with fashion houses in Paris. Maybe she could return to acting. Maybe make one more film. Hitchcock is dead, but there are other directors, she thought. Early September. Stephanie was in Paris. Grace went to get her. They'd drive back together. Monday, September 13th. They left early in the morning. Grace, driving. Stephanie passenger. Rover, 3500, Mountain Road. Winding, but Grace knew this road. She'd been driving it for years. They talked on the road. Stephanie asked, Mom, why do you look unhappy? Grace said, I'm not unhappy. Stephanie said, don't lie. I can see. Grace said, I'm just tired. Stephanie said, do you miss your dreams? Grace was silent. Then said, yes, I miss them a lot. I wanted to be an actress, but I became a princess. Sometimes I don't know if I made the right choice. Stephanie said, do you regret it? Grace said, I don't know. Maybe. It became noon. The weather was hot. Grace said, I feel a little tired. Stephanie said, let's stop. I'll drive. Grace said, no, I can do it. But actually she couldn't. She was dizzy. A curve came. Grace didn't brake. Stephanie yelled, Mom, curve. Grace didn't answer. Her eyes were empty. The car was going straight. The road was ending. The guardrail was coming. Stephanie tried to grab the steering wheel, but it was too late. The car went over the guardrail, rolled down the cliff, 130 feet, metal crushing. Glass breaking. The car stopped. Silence. Stephanie opened her eyes. Inside the car, head spinning, body hurting, her mother motionless, eyes closed. Mom, Mom, wake up! No answer. Stephanie panicked. Tried to get out of the car. Door stuck. Climbed out the window. Called for help. People came. An ambulance came. They pulled Grace out. Her head was bleeding. She wasn't breathing. They took her to the hospital. Doctors intervened. Head trauma. Coma. Brain death. Rainier came. Save her, he said. Doctors said, there's nothing we can do. September 14th, 1982, Grace Kelly died, 52 years old. Official cause, head trauma from accident. But there were questions. Police questioned Stephanie. What happened that day? Stephanie said, I don't remember. How can you not remember? You were there. Stephanie said, I don't know. Everything happened so fast. Did your mother hit the brakes? Stephanie said, I don't know. Why don't you know? Stephanie cried. Because I don't remember. Please leave me alone. An autopsy was performed. Report. Stroke. Grace Kelly had a mild stroke before the crash. That's why she couldn't brake. She lost control. But there were other theories. Some said there was a problem with the brakes. Some said Stephanie was driving, not Grace. Stephanie didn't speak for 30 years. In 2012, she finally spoke. Mom was driving. She had a stroke. I tried to save her, but couldn't. I still blame myself. Grace Kelly's story is a tragedy. Hollywood's biggest star gave up everything to become a princess. But she wasn't happy. She was lonely in the palace. She gave up her dreams. She lost her freedom. She died in a mysterious accident at 52. Today, Grace Kelly is remembered as both star and princess. But what's most remembered is this. Escape wasn't a solution. She ran from Hollywood but entered another cage, a golden cage, elegant but prison. Grace Kelly wanted to be free, but she never was. She lived 52 years from 1929 to 82, but how many years did she really live free? Nobody knows. Maybe never.